So thank you for joining us. I'm going to give everybody just a few minutes to get in, and then we'll get started with our first craft. All right. Welcome, everybody. Just a few little notes before we get started. This is our very first makerfest online, so welcome and thank you for joining us today. We're going to have 4 different projects that we do. We've got a paper pumpkin and a Frankenstein pumpkin, a rainbow pumpkin, and then a chalky paint pumpkin. So I wanted to let you guys know that if you want to ask questions, we have our lovely co-host here who's going to be answering questions. You can put them in the Q&A and she will answer them there. They won't work in the chat, so don't use the chat. And it looks like we've got everybody in, so I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Let me show you what we'll be working with today. So today we're going to start with this paper pumpkin. Actually, you can look at it down here. It might be clear. You can kind of see the lines that way. All right, so this is a 5-sided paper pumpkin. It's really easy to make. It's almost all paper with a little chenille stem here. So what we're going to need for this project is obviously some paper. So you're going to want orange, brown, and green. There is a template that goes along with this, but I did a free form that I wanted to show you guys an easy way to do this so that, you know, if you don't have the template, you can still do the project. It's super easy to do the pumpkin. And then you're going to need some of the, like I said, the chenille stems. Really, you just need one of the green. Some scissors and a couple of markers. You're going to need orange and green because you're making the detail here on the paper pieces. A pencil for tracing, and then some glue for the paper. And we're going to talk through some alternative ways you can do certain parts of this. So if you don't have some of these supplies, just let us know in the Q&A, and we'll be happy to talk you through what you can use instead. So that's one of the cool things about crafting is, you know, you can always take what you have and come up with something awesome. So, all right, let's get started with the first part. So you're going to want your template for your pumpkin. So if you printed the one out online, that's fine. If you didn't, the easiest way to do this is to fold a piece of your construction paper in half. So you want to fold the long side in like this and just crease it. And then the shape you're going for here is not quite an oval, but you can start with an oval if you want to trace an oval to start. But what you're doing is there's going to be a dip in the top here because this is where the stem is going to stay. And then there's a tiny little dip here in the bottom where the pumpkin would sit down on the ground. All right, so once you have created your template, either from the printout or by creating your own, you're just going to lay it down on the top of this folded piece of paper. It's kind of hard to see because I used orange, so sorry about that. But you're just going to put it down on top of the paper, hold it down with one hand, and then you're going to trace the template onto one side of this folded paper. And the reason why I'm doing it folded, you'll see in a minute when I cut it out, you're going to get 2 pumpkins out of this one cut. So it saves you from having to cut so many pumpkins out and trace so many pumpkins. It's a shortcut. Any questions so far, Lindsay? All right. All right, so then I've got my first one traced. This. I'm just going to cut around where I traced. And I'm just using I think these are the Creatology or Westcott scissors. Any of your kid scissors will do. And you can use construction paper, or you can use I forgot what this paper is called. Craft paper. Any kind of cardstock would work, scrapbooking paper. It does work best if you do it with an 8.5 by 11 or a 9 by 12 sheet, because there's a lot less waste that way. Okay, so now once I get that done, see I've got 2 pumpkins now instead of having just one at the end. All right, so I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to do this one more time. So you need 5 pieces, 5 pumpkins in the end. So since I had the one already in orange, that's 1, and then I just cut out 2 more, so that's 3, and then I'm going to fold another piece in half, and that'll be 4 and 5. Okay. So again, you're just laying your pumpkin up on the top, hold it down, and trace with a pencil. And I always do it with a pencil just because if you don't want to erase the lines, or you do it really light so you can't see the lines, or if you mess up, you can, erase and start over. But you can use anything. You can use an orange marker if you want, because then that'll also be pretty hidden on the orange paper. So I've done my trace, and I'm just going to cut this one out again. And if you guys don't have kid scissors, you can always have your grown-up use their big scissors and cut these out for you too. Then it'll be like twice as fast, because then you'll have help. Maybe you can tell Lindsay where you're from in the Q&A so we know where you guys are tuning in from. We're in Texas. Super excited that it's October and it's starting to feel nice outside. It's not 100 degrees. All right, so we have 5 of the orange pieces of pumpkin. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, stack them all up so that they all align. So that's all in a stack. And I'm just going to fold them in half. So the dips in the middle, right here, dip and a dip, you're folding like that. So that, and make sure your sides touch over here. And you're just going to do that because we're going to glue these together, and you want them all to be creased at the same spot. All right, so you're going to set one of these aside because we're going to do 4 sides, and then we're going to do the stem, and then we'll put the 5th side on.
We have Michigan and Illinois.
Awesome. Wow.
Maryland.
Wow.
Texas.
Texas, nice. All right. So you can see all my little pieces here. So I'm going to take the first 2, and so it looks like a butterfly almost. And you're just going to put 2 of the sides together like this. So it looks just, you're going to go here like that. But you got to put your glue on there, right? So your Elmer stick glue. I always use the Elmer stick glue for the paper because it's less messy than, the wet glue. But if you only have wet glue, that's fine. I like to, if I only have wet glue for paper, what I do is I put a little bit on, and then I take a brush and I brush it out so that it doesn't pool or get too thick in any one place, because that'll make your paper curl. And then just go all the way to the outside edges and get all the inside until it's completely coated, because you're going to want them to stick together really well so that they don't curl away from each other. So just go generously, put this on, cover every bit of it. See, it's already starting to curl a little bit. All right, so then you're just going to take your 2 sides. So I've got my glue here and here, and you're going to put the creases together. I'm going to do it really slow so you can see what I'm doing. And then you're just going to press the sides with glue together like this. And you can kind of do it on the table so that you have it even, and press it together. So see, you've attached your first 2 sides. So then, let me move this out of the way. You're just going to lay it over, keep it folded like a book. Okay, So that'll help make sure that they stay together. And they're not all attached. It's just those two that you glued together are attached. Okay, so I'm gonna do the same thing here. So with your top pumpkin side right here and a new piece of pumpkin, you're gonna do the glue again like this where they would connect. So I'm gonna do that. And go all over the paper. Make sure you get the edges really good. And this stuff dries clear, so if you get it off, you know, the edges, you can wipe it off. If you're working on one of your grown-ups' work surfaces like the table or something, you might want to put down a piece of paper so you don't get glue on their table. I'm working on my craft table, so it's all right if I get glue on it. Okay, and again, just gonna put the two glue sides together, just keeping that middle, starting at the crease down at the bottom and then just coming up like this. And then I'm gonna squish it all together like a book. Again, I'm just flattening it out like that so that it really presses that glue all the way around, because you put the glue all over and you wanna make sure you press it all over so it doesn't curl. All right, and I've got one more side. Got to make sure I make sure I have the dip at the top, the bigger dip at the top, so that it matches. Okay, so it's my last one for now. I've got one more that I set aside. All right, so again, you got your two sides you're going to glue. Put your glue on it. Just like this. And on the other side, get the edge. All right. And we're going to put it together like this. Okay. So again, this is very repetitive what we're doing here. Like you can do this same part over and over. See, I have a little bit of glue there, so I can just wipe that off and not worry about. It'll dry clear, but I'm just going to get rid of it. There we go. All right, so squish it down real good, like it's a book. Make sure your sides are all aligned. All right. All right, so I'm going to open these up just a little bit so you can see how it's starting to fan out. So see how you've got the sides that you've connected with glue here, and you're starting to create this dimensional pumpkin. And your last piece is going to come in here and close it off, but you want to leave it open to the back side just for a little bit, because what you're going to do is we're going to make the stem and this little curly vine that comes out of it, and that's going to go down in there before you put that last piece on. Okay. All right. Do we have any questions so far? I'm going to take just a little pause and see if you guys have any questions about what we're doing or what I just went through.
Notice if you slow down, if maybe you want to do a high level, go over what you just did.
Yeah, sure. So again, for those of you who might have joined a little later, the way I got started here was I took a piece of my orange construction paper or cardstock. It's 9.5 or the 9 by 12, and I just fold it in half. So I take the long side and I fold that in half like this. And you can either use the template that's online, or you can just draw a pumpkin shape, which is what I did. I just drew the pumpkin shape. So you can see, oh, I got it upside down. Do I have it upside down? It's hard to tell. So you got a little dip on, it's basically an oval, but with a dip on the top, because this is where the stem's going to come out, and then a little tiny dip on the bottom where it rests, where it sits down on the ground. And so once you have either traced or created your template, you're going to lay it down on that half sheet of paper. So just you want your template to fit down on the I know it's hard to see because it's the same color. And then you're just going to trace your template and cut it out. And the reason I'm doing it on a folded sheet of paper is one trace and one cut gets you 2 pumpkin pieces, and you need a total of 5. All right, so next we're going to make the stem, and I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to make the stem, so you can make it whichever way you prefer. So for the stem, you're going to need some brown cardstock or construction paper. And let's see here. I just took a little strip of it. So it's, you know, about the height of your scissor blades here, or the length of my finger, like this. So, I don't know, 2.5, 3 inches. And then you're just going to kind of take it and crumple it up like an accordion, just a little bit like this. And then you're going to crunch it down, kind of twist it a little bit. And it's going to give you like this crunchy tree look. So what you're doing is you're trying to mimic that, you know, sharp-edged pumpkin stem that are on pumpkins. So one of the tips that I can give you is it's sometimes hard to get this piece to glue down in the pumpkin because, you know, it's the surface isn't flat. So one of the things you can do is you can cut down the sides a little bit so that you have less of that bumpy surface area that you have to worry about gluing. So then it makes it a little bit more flat, you can see. So then when we put it in here and glue it, it's flat instead of round. Actually, I'm going to cut out a little bit more to make it as thin as possible. And then I'm going to show you the other way you can do it because, you know, got to have lots of ways to do it. All right, so I've made it as thin as possible, and I'm just going to take my pumpkin. So see the open seam here? So these are all nice and clean. There's no crease or crack in it here. But this back side where they've all come together, that's where you're going to put this pumpkin stem at the top. I'm just going to lay it down and use lots of glue of my stick glue. So again, if you're using wet glue, just be really careful not to let it get too wet or it'll make the paper ripple. All right, I'm just gonna put lots of glue on there and then stick my stem down. Okay, and then the next step you have to do is with the pipe cleaner, and you're gonna do that now because you also want this pipe cleaner to be glued down in here. So what I do is I take, again, about my finger length here. So a couple of inches, two or 3 inches, and then I'm gonna start wrapping it around a pencil at that point. And you're just gonna wrap, wrap, wrap all the way down till you get to the end. And then you can slide it off the pencil. And then you're gonna fan it out like this. This is gonna give you that cool spirally effect. These are those little, you see the pumpkin vines and they have these little curly Q pieces of the vine that are on the pumpkin. And you're just gonna lay that down into the pumpkin here too. So it's gonna look like this. So you've got your stem and this is just gonna lay by it, that straight part. And I would glue it down too. Now, if you have your grown-up there with you and your grown-up has a hot glue gun, your grown-up can do this part with the hot glue gun. But if you're crafting by yourself, no hot glue. Make sure you're using your safe glue, your Elmer's glue. All right, I'm just gonna put some more right here. All right, so now I have all the stuff that needs to go inside, so you can see right there. Looks kind of messy. We're gonna cover that up. So you're gonna take your glue stick, and you're gonna go, again, all around that paper. Get it real good, all over, both sides this time, because we're finishing off the pumpkin. Get the edges really good. You can put more on your stem if you want. And then your other pumpkin piece, so see how it folds out towards you like that? You're gonna take the back side of it and you're gonna put your glue on it. And you're gonna do the whole thing. Get all the edges and do both sides this time, because this is your last piece. All right. And then you're going to lay it down right on top of your stem and your little curly Q on top of your other pumpkin, and you're just going to press it down again like we did before. All the way around. And you can even fold it a different direction if you want and press it down that way just to make sure that you're getting the glue mashed in. Okay. So now you can open up these pieces like this. And that's how you get your pumpkin's 3D effect. Let me get all this out of the way here.
We do have one question to show how you did the stem again.
Yes, absolutely. And then I'll show you how to do that other stem we talked about. All right, so let me do the stem one more time. So again, you're just taking, let's see, the best way to show this. So you can take your paper, and this is your short end right here. And you're just gonna cut 2 or 3 inches of the end off until you get like a little strip. And then you're gonna take the strip and don't do it super precisely, but you're basically doing this accordion effect here, where you're kind of crumpling it back and forth like this. You can kind of do it messy like this. You're gonna kind of crush it in your hand, and you can even twist it a little bit. Because what you're doing is you're getting that gnarly, crunchy vine effect that you get on the top of a pumpkin. So it's gonna sit down in your pumpkin like this, and then the stem's gonna stand out. So that's how I did this stem right here. And you can cut away some of this bottom part and make it flatter so it sits in there easier. Or you can take, and if you don't care about doing that super 3D effect, you can just take a little strip about 1 inch by 3 inches like this. So I make it a little bit longer than I want, because you're gonna, some of it's gonna be hiding down underneath that pumpkin. And then just, you can kind of give it a contour. You make the top a little skinnier, and then it can flare out at the sides that way, like it's sitting down in that base of the pumpkin like this. And then what you're gonna do is you're gonna glue it down in there like we just glued this other one. So it's gonna stick down below the surface of the orange pumpkin. And then when you put your other pumpkin piece on, it'll cover it up and it'll stick out and it'll look like that. So this is a little bit, this is a 2-dimensional piece. So you can see it's not gonna have the same cool 3D effect that your crumpled piece will have. But if you're getting frustrated with that crumpled piece and getting it to glue in, you can always do a flat stem, and that'll work too. All right, any other questions on the pieces that I've done so far before I go to the lines here?
No.
Okay, all right. So the last piece that you're gonna do is you're gonna put the detail on. Now you can do this ahead of time, but I like to do it at the end. I find it just as easy to do it at the end. But you wanna make your leaf. Let me get my green piece of paper. And again, you can use a leaf template, or I just cut mine. I just freeform mine. Just cut a little piece out of your paper. Again, you know, a couple of inches wide by like 3 inches long. And you can do this one of 2 ways. You can fold your piece of paper in half like this, and then you're basically gonna cut out, it's like a like a half football shape. So you're going to come from a point, and you're going to go toward the other side, and then you're going to come back around to a point like this. And then when you open it up, there's your leaf. This is how I used to cut them when I was a kid. So this is my tried and true method. I like it better than tracing it. It's also how you can cut hearts out. All right, so once you get your leaf, take your green marker, and you're just gonna draw a line down the middle. Doesn't have to be perfect. All leaves are different. And then little lines on the side of the big line down the middle, like this. Well, that's upside down, like that. Okay, and you can do both sides. Because again, this is a 3D pumpkin, so it can be seen from any side. All right, and then this little leaf is gonna go on this curly Q here. So now this one takes a little bit of time. You can actually put it down here in the paper. I would recommend if you don't have a grown-up or your grown-up doesn't have a hot glue gun, you can put it down in here like this and you can glue it to the paper. It works a lot better than trying to glue it to the Chanel stem. But if you're gluing it to the Chanel stem, I would recommend you use hot glue and do just a little dot of hot glue on your piece of pipe cleaner here, and then stick your leaf to it. So it has the same effect, you can see. So it's still in the same location. It's just, you know, whichever method you want to use. In fact, I didn't even glue that one, and look, it's staying pretty good. So if you put it in the paper and you put a little bit of glue on it, it'll stay just fine. So we'll go ahead and put glue on. I won't use the hot glue today. Not for this one anyway. All right, so you just put it on the end down here, and then you're just gonna slide it in there by this little green pipe cleaner. Voila. And then we're gonna put our trace lines on the pumpkin. So this is pretty easy. The best way to do it is to open your pumpkin up and do it one side at a time. And you can do one line down the middle if you want. And then you're just gonna make really lightly arched lines out to the side. So it's not quite like a C shape, because a C kind of comes down and back around and up. It's more like, I don't know, it's like an ear almost. Can you see it? All right, so then I'm just gonna do that again over here, arched out, and one more. My pumpkin fits like 2 on each side and 1 in the middle. And then you're just gonna do that for every section. So go down the middle, and then do an arch, do an arch, do an arch, do an arch. They don't have to be perfect. Again, nature has its imperfections, so one down the middle, arch, 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 like that, for each section. You can do this with different color, like if you want it to stand out really, really, like a lot, you can do this with brown, but I really like the subtle look of the orange. All right, so I got all my sides now. So the last piece is just fanning it out and setting it up. So you're just gonna, you know, move your little sections so that they're equal distances apart. It's the top view like this. And then put it wherever you want. You can put it on your table, put it on your desk. You can lay it flat and mail it in a big envelope to your Nana or your aunt or your uncle or your friend. But these are super cool. All right, any questions on the paper pumpkin?
No questions, but there's a lot of people looking forward to the next pumpkin project.
Woohoo! All right, well, off goes the paper pumpkin and in comes Frank. All right, Frank is one of my favorite. Here's Frank. He's a little shy, so why don't you guys wave and say hi to Frank? He's been nervous about doing this show today, so you guys make him feel welcome. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about, I'm not going to do every step in this one live because there's a dry time with Frank. So Frank is one, so we'll walk through as many times as you guys need to, what we need to do with Frank. But I'm going to show you kind of what I did to get him done. So you can start with a white pumpkin or an orange pumpkin. This is actually done with an orange pumpkin, and this one was done with a white pumpkin. You can kind of see how this one has a lighter green. This one is a little bit more of a sickly green. So if you want like that ghoulish green Frankie look, I would recommend doing an orange pumpkin, and you're gonna need 2 coats. This right here was 2 coats. But you can pick whatever color pumpkin you want, because truthfully, if you put 3 coats on here, you'd never know what color this was to start with anyway. All right. And I just, you know, paint, sometimes paint is hard to come by. So, you know, keep in mind, you can pick whichever color green you want. I use the Craft Smart paint for this one. It's the spring leaf, which is really funny to me because this is a fall, you know, Frankenstein. So apparently they're Frankenstein and a spring leaf are the same color. And I just used a foam brush. So it's super easy. And I'm going to give you some tips on painting it. So you're going to have to paint this in sections because it's, you know, it's round. It's going to have to sit on this end. And then when you get to the bottom part like this, it's going to be super tricky, right? Because it can't sit on its little, you know, stem very easily. So what I would recommend is you start with the top and tape this part off. So they come already with this cool, gnarly looking, you know, pumpkin stem that looks great. It's perfect for Frank. So if you don't want to get paint on it, you can tape it off with masking tape. I use masking tape because it comes off pretty easily. It won't peel off your paint. Or you can just be super, super careful. So when I did this one, I just made sure that I went really carefully around the edges of this brown so that it didn't cover it up, or so that I didn't leave any orange either. So I would just pour your paint out. You can use palette paper. You can use a palette like this, a paint palette, or anything you have available, paper plate. Or you can pour it straight onto the pumpkin if you do just a little bit. Like that's how I did the top. I just poured a ring and then I just pulled the paint down like this, just evenly all the way across the top, and I rotated it like this. And I did about half the pumpkin. So I came down about halfway and then I let it dry. And then I flipped it over, and you can put this in, so you guys can get inventive here. You can put this like on a little bowl so that the stem sits down in a bowl, or you can use, you know, a cup, a mason jar, whatever you have handy so that it kind of stabilizes it, and then just hold the top of it here with your finger. And then, you know, again, pour the paint on, put the paint on a palette, however you want to do it. And then you're just dragging the paint down around the edges, and you're meeting in the middle, right? So, because you've painted this part and now you're coming down and you're painting this part. So then when that dries, you're going to flip it back over. Or if it's not quite dry, you can use, like, this is just a mason jar lid, the ring to the lid. I put that down and I just set my pumpkin on it so that it holds it off of the ground, but it does, you know, it lets me paint before it gets completely dry. So then I did the top part again, just down halfway, halfway, halfway. And then I really did let this part dry, because if you set it down, and I did it the bottom, you know, you're not going to see the bottom, right? Because it's just sitting there. So it doesn't matter if it gets a little paint on the ring, but for the top, if you're sitting it on something like this, like that, you don't want to get your paint on it, because that's going to be the part you see. Or if you're super, super good at balance, you can put it down on that little stem, and then you could paint it while it was wet, and you can just spin it. You just have to hold it up here with your finger. So lots of ways you can paint this. It just depends on what you have handy, how fast you want to go, what kind of look you want to get. You know me, there's no 100%, this is the way you have to do it. So just whatever works best for you guys. But this is what it looks like after 2 coats on an orange pumpkin. All right. So what we're going to do next is we have to make Frank's hair, which is super fun. So this version of hair, I did with like the spiky tops. So you can see how you've cut out, it looks like a crown. It's got like a point down, point down, point down. And that's just using the Creatology craft fur. So hold that up so you can see it. It's just a little, I don't know, little swatch of black, furry looking, looks like a Yeti or something. So what I did was I just cut a strip off of that. And for this Frank, I did half of a section. So this is a full section. So it comes folded like this. And so this Frank has like a small hair piece. And my next Frank, I'm going to give him like big hair. So I'm going to show you how you can put it on. Look, so maybe this is like Frank Jr. and Papa Frank or something. He's got more hair. And you can make the hair however you want. So you can leave it straight if you don't want to cut it. I kind of like how it looks with the straight top because it's still, the way the fur comes up, it still has like this cool little fringe to it. So you don't have to cut down into the fur unless you want to. So I can show you how to do both. And then we're going to give him his cool little eyebrow here. All right. The other thing you're going to need for Frank are some wiggly eyes. So I went with the ones that are the 1 inch or the 28 millimeter. That's a good size. But just know that you can also use like bigger. Let me see. I've got some really big ones back here. There's like some super giant ones. See how much bigger those are than these. So if you want them to look like real crazy and like big old googly eyes, you can use whatever size you have or whichever size you want. I wouldn't go too terribly small. Or if you don't have googly eyes, you can actually just paint eyes on, but it has a really fun effect if you put the googly eyes. All right. So let's see here. So you take your fur piece, and like I said, I just cut off 3 inches off of the end. So if you're using your craft scissors, it's best, I'm going to open this up. Let me move this aside for just a second. It's best if you open up the piece of fur. And just be careful, there's staples in this. So if you need to get your grown-up to help you, make sure you do that. I don't want you guys hurting yourself on those staples.
Maddie says that they have the big eyes.
Oh, yes. That's what I'm talking about. Big old crazy Frank. His big old googly eyes. Love it. All right, so I'm just going to get these staples out real carefully. And then, like I said, if you're using the craft scissors, you're going to want to open up the piece to its full width here. And you can lay your hand down, and it's about the width of your hand is how much you want to cut off of the end. And I would turn it over so that you can see the felt part that the hair is stuck to, because it'll give you a cleaner line. And you can also, this is a little trick I like to use, you can take a straight edge and some tape. And you can put the tape down where you want to cut, like right outside of where you want to cut, like this, so it makes a nice straight line. And then you're just going to cut right inside that line of tape. And just go slow with your craft scissors. Now, if you don't have craft scissors, you can have your grown-up do it with their scissors, or, you know, if your grown-up's doing it, they can actually fold it in half and probably, you know, chop through with the big scissors. But I would not recommend you try that with these little scissors, because the hair is going to want to bind, and it's going to make it really difficult to cut. It's already going to be a little hard to cut, so you're going to have to go real slow, little bitty cuts, cut, 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 so that you get through that hair. And who knew that you would be giving Frankenstein a haircut? You did not think you'd be doing that today, did you? All right. You know, you could always make like a little beard out of it too. Like, oh. Just saying. Give yourself some hair. I mean, Halloween's coming up. You could be making your costume here. All right. So, oh man, there's like hair everywhere. It looks like I had a bear in here. Okay. So clean up your little hairballs. All right, so you have your hair. You can cut it, like I said before, you can cut the width to any size you want. So you can do that little half piece we talked about. I'm going to do the full piece for this other Frank, just to show you the difference between the two. I'm also going to leave it natural on the top. So see how it's really cool and like, you know, spiky along the top anyway. I'm going to leave it like that. All right, and then you're going to want to remove the excess pieces. So Frank's going to want to shed just a little bit because you've cut his hair. So just pull the excess pieces off and put those in the trash. Don't put them in the floor or your grown-up is going to get really mad at you. All right. So I have my piece. I'm going to lay it fur down. And then I'm going to take my pumpkin and I'm going to figure out where I want like the face to be. So if you have a part of your pumpkin you don't like as well, or like there's these seams on the pumpkin, I don't know if you can see like where the pumpkin goes together, these rough seams, it's on equal sides. So I pick one of the sides where the seams go down the side away from the face, that way you don't see them. So I'm going to pick this side, I like this side, and then you're just going to kind of figure out where you want his hair to be. And this is where you're going to need your grown-up to help you, because you're going to want to use hot glue to put this on to the pumpkin, because regular glue is not going to work to hold this down. All right. All right. So have your grown-up do this part. I'm just going to be generous with the hot glue, and you're just doing it along the bottom side of the hair. So not the side that sticks up away and you want to point up, but the other side that you kind of cut and is flat, more flat. All right. So lots of hot glue here. Because you're going to want it to stick. And I'm just using the regular crafting hot glue gun. Nothing fancy. Craft Smart, I think, is what it is. It's not going to take a whole lot. I was at the end of a stick, so all right. So you've got the side of your pumpkin that you want to put this on. You figured out where you want to put it. So you're just going to hold it up and put it on where you want it and just press it down. Again, your grown-up should be doing this part, not you. You're going to press it down like that. All right. So his hair is done. Okay. So now we're going to cut the eyebrow. So this one, again, you can cut a smaller piece. I have a spare piece I'm going to use here. And you're just going to cut half of it. So you know how it unfolds into this long piece here? So I'm just going to cut it in half. And then get rid of the loose stuff. Yeah, I need like some sort of Frankenstein comb. I wonder what kind of comb Frankenstein uses. Maybe he doesn't use a comb. Maybe that's the problem. I need to get him one. That was crazy, man. Okay. So I'm going to take that half piece. Well, that didn't work well. Okay. I'm going to take that half piece and then I'm going to cut like half an inch or like a finger width. I guess if you have really small fingers, maybe two. But you're going to make, you know, about half an inch wide strip. So again, you can use that tape method we talked about. In fact, you could use the width of the tape if you wanted to, and you could put it at the edge, and then you can just cut along the edge of the tape here. And that could be, that way you have a uniform width. Oh man, look at that. He's gonna have crazy eyebrows. One of them's like sticking up. It's like he's making a face like, what? Do we want to give him crazy eyebrows? All right, if you don't want to give him crazy eyebrows, you can cut that part off. Just give him a haircut. And I did not go to the right school to do the hair cutting. All right. Like I said, who knew we were going to be cutting Frankenstein's hair today? It was crazy. All right. So now you have this nice little strip. And you can pull your tape off. This, because you're going to want to, we're going to hot glue this one again. So your grown-up's going to have work still. They've got to hot glue the eyebrows on. Okay. All right, so you've got your little strip, and you want to take the side that doesn't have the fur on it, and that's where you're going to put the hot glue. And then you're going to put it just below the hairline. So you want to leave just a little bit of space between the hair and the eyebrows so that, you know, you can see his forehead. Because Frank is very contemplative. Okay. So, grown-ups, hot glue, and just be generous. Go all the way across the back, like this. Okay. And I'm just gonna press it on in the center, like this. Where you want it, press it down. Get rid of the excess hair here. It's gonna wanna fall out. Okay, there we go. All right, ta-da. All right, now we have the googly eyes. Again, whatever size eye you want to use. I wouldn't recommend going too terribly small just because then it won't fit the pumpkin, but you can go really big. You can use really big eyes. I think we have a few people that are using the big eyes. I can show you the difference here. So this is the really big eye. So it gives them like this crazy, looks deranged, like crazy pumpkin. Okay, not that this is much better. All right, and then this is the smaller. This is the one that I used on the other pumpkin. And here, oh look, man, you could give them like, what if you did this? See, if I left that crazy eyebrow, I could have left one big eye and one little eye and that crazy eyebrow. I'm telling you guys, get creative with this. This is super fun. This is your pumpkin, and make him look as crazy as you want to. All right, so this one, you can, if you have the sticky googly eyes, you just peel the back off and it'll stick on. If you don't have the sticky ones, that's okay. You can use glue. You can have your grown-up do the hot glue, or you can use your Elmer's glue. It's just going to take a while to dry. So you're just going to put those on right under the old eyebrow. Well, see, I got it on my finger. This is why you have your grown-up do this, because that burns. You don't want that happening to you. All right. Again, oh, get the hair off. Frank, your hair, it's everywhere. All right. A little bit more glue. And you're gonna put the other eye on. All right. Looking good, Frank. Check it out. Okay. So now, eyeballs away. Now that you have your eyes glued on, we're gonna decorate his face. So if you'll remember, he's got his little mouth, his nose, and all these scars on him. So we're gonna do that. Now, you can do this several different ways. You can use a black paint, so you can use your Creatology paint, you can use Craftsmart, whatever kind of black paint that you have. If you want, your grown-up can do this with a paint pen. You can do it with a marker. So if you've got markers, you can put these on with markers too. I'm gonna use the paint pens because they're less messy here than me getting a bunch of paint out. We'll be doing that later anyway. And you're just gonna draw a mouth on. You guys all know what mouths look like, right? We're gonna make them look happy. You can make them look angry, I guess. I think my Frank's pretty happy. he's happy because he knows Halloween is coming and he is about to get to go trick-or-treating and get candy. And he's going to dress up as a human for Halloween this year. All right, I'm going to make this a really thick line so you can see it. All right, so you start with the mouth here, and then you can draw the teeth off of that. So the teeth are just going to be, here, I'm going to get down here. You can see it. The teeth are just going to be little rectangles off the bottom of the mouth. You see that? Like that. You can give them how many of her teeth you want. You can, you know, Frank Jr. over there, he's got 2 teeth. I suppose we can make Frank Sr. look like that too. There we go. So that's how we did it. 1 up, 1 down. You can give them pointy teeth if you want. And then you're gonna draw his little nose. You can give him a big nose. You know what? I'm gonna give this Frank a really big nose. There we go. Look at that. Big old nose. All right. And then you're gonna do some scars, right? So you want him to look like Frankenstein. So that's just that's easy. That's a line. Like a line wherever you want to put his scars. And then little hash marks across it. It's like stitches. See, like that? These are super easy to draw. You just put as many of those as you want. So if he's real scarred up, you do lots. Just all over. Give him one over here. So again, it's just a long line with little hash lines across it like that. I want to do one more down here. It's kind of hard to do. It's like working in a mirror. There we go, like that. All right, see? Look at all the scars. See, he looks really happy for having all the scars. Maybe he's happy about the scars. Feels tough. All right, now I'm gonna take my white, and this is where it helps to have, if you're gonna do the white teeth, it helps to have like paint. If you're gonna do this with, you know, use your craft paint and a brush. And you're just gonna fill in this little tooth with white. And you can also use paint if you don't have googly eyes. So see, I mean, this is just black and white here, that's what a googly eye is. So, you know, if you don't have googly eyes at home, or you only have the small ones, don't worry about it. You can just draw them on with paint. All right, so check it out. Does he look tough to you? He kind of looks tough. He looks a little silly. It's all right, we like silly Frank. So, any questions, anything you want me to review? Frank's pretty easy. Like I said, it's just the time-consuming part is painting the pumpkin. So, you know, this will take, I don't know, probably an hour or so, because, you know, it's going to take like 10 or 15 minutes for your pumpkin to dry. So the long part is just waiting for him to dry. And, you know, you can use those techniques we talked about where you, you know, paint the top half and then flip them over and paint the bottom half. And it helps you move along a little faster. And then the hair we talked about. So you can do lots of hair, big eyebrows, or you can do a little patch of hair and you can make it jagged. You can use big eyes, little eyes. You can give them sharp teeth, no teeth. You can make them angry. So have fun with it. It's your pumpkin. You can make a whole family of Franks, just like I did. Any questions?
A lot of people are just saying they're still painting. So.
Still painting. Yep. Yeah. If you're doing this right now while I'm talking you through it, it's gonna take a little while to paint, which is okay. I mean, you can keep watching. Watch me make the rest of these projects while you paint. We can keep each other company, and then you can. Oh, you know what? You can flip to my overhead camera and I'll show them. So when you guys get done, always feel free to, you know, you can have your grown-up take pictures of your work, your pumpkins, and put them on, you know, Facebook, Instagram. and just mark them, hashtag make it with Michaels. And then we can all see, everybody else who's crafting along with us can see, you know, your cool craft that you did today. Man, Frank, you are shedding so bad.
They said he looks younger.
He does? He's got that youthful look. I like it.
And then there is another question. If you can show the white marker you were using again.
Oh, yeah, sure. So again, grown-ups, this is a grown-up marker because it's a paint pen, right? But it's the Craft Smart paint pen. They come in single packs. You can get, I used a black one and a white one. And I think there you have other options. There's Sharpie makes a white pen, and obviously the black, that's easy. But as far as kids paint pens go, I don't think they make a kids paint pen. So for the kiddos doing these, I would recommend the paint, just paint in a really fine brush. So obviously don't use a foam brush. You're gonna want something with a finer tip on it.
And one more question.
Yep.
Do we spray the pumpkins to seal the color?
You absolutely can spray the pumpkin to seal the color, or you can use a paint that allows you to put it outside. If you're putting the pumpkin out in the weather, there are paints that you can use that have a protector in it, or you can use whatever paint you have on hand, and then you can use, you know, a Krylon spray-on protector. But again, grown-ups, we don't want any kids spraying paint. All right, are we ready to move on to our rainbow pumpkin?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, Frank.
There's a lot of comments. They're having a lot of fun.
Oh, awesome. Me too. This is good stuff. All right, so for those of you who are just joining us, we have already done our paper pumpkin, and we just finished Frank, and we are starting on our rainbow pumpkin. This one I love because it's so colorful and it's super fun. And I'm going to teach you guys something today. I'm very excited about this one. Okay, so again, I'm going to start with a white pumpkin for this one. This actually does work better than the orange, because for some of the colors, especially like these light colors, you would have to put more coats on it to get it to cover up. So if you can get a white pumpkin, that's what I would recommend. But like anything, if it's like, man, I got what I got, that's okay. You can paint a real pumpkin if you wanted to. For this one, I wouldn't recommend doing Frank with a real pumpkin, because I'm not really sure how hot glue on a real pumpkin is going to turn out. So I would recommend sticking with the craft pumpkin for Frank. But you know, for those of you doing just paint, it's totally okay to you know, paint on a real pumpkin with your craft paint. So all right, so I'm going to show you a little trick here. So there is, man, I don't know what to call it. I guess I should have looked up what the official terminology is, but there's a design technique called Roy G. Biv, and it is literally R-O-Y. You see where I'm going here? Red, orange, yellow, Roy. G, green. B, blue, and V, violet. So there's an acronym, Roy G. Biv, and that's how you know the order to put them in. You see all that, and that's what we're using here on this pumpkin today. So that is 6. There are 6 colors here. Now, in order to get equal amounts, like equal stripes around your pumpkin, you have to use a number that's divisible by 6. So I counted the ridges on my pumpkin, and I got 18, which is perfect because that is divisible by 6. So that means my pumpkin will have 3 stripes of each color as you go around like this. So if your pumpkin, you can see the natural ridges. Here, let me swap this out. You can see the natural ridges on the pumpkin. Now, occasionally you're going to get to a pumpkin piece that might have 2 little pieces. So if you count your pumpkin and you have 19 ridges, you only need 18. So I would say find the 2 smallest ridges In my case, this pumpkin, this one right here could have been split. And I'm doing that all one color. Now, if you have the opposite problem where you count and you only get 17 ridges, then you can find one that's a really big ridge, like this, is really wide, and you can paint this one 2 different colors, and that's what I'm doing here. So, first of all, kind of assess your pumpkin and figure out you want to, and again, if you have like a really small pumpkin, so they make pumpkins that are more like this, so see the size difference here? So if you got a really little pumpkin, you might only have 12 ridges. So if you have 12, 12 is divisible by 6, you would just have 2 of each color. So that's the best method that I can tell you is just work where you're sectioning it off in a number that's divisible by 6. And if you need help, always ask your grown-up. They can help you with this part too. All right.
What if they only have 5 paint colors?
Oh, if you only have 5 paint colors, then you're going to want to find a number that's divisible by 5. So let's say you have Roy G. Buh, and you don't have the violet. Then you're going to want 10 ridges or 15 ridges or 20 ridges. So just anything that's divisible by 5. Okay, good question. Or if you're going all rogue on me here and you're like, man, I'm not going to do a rainbow pumpkin. My favorite 2 colors are orange and yellow, and you're just going to do like a ooh or an orange, yellow, and white. What if they're making like a candy corn flavored, a candy corn themed pumpkin? Okay, so that's 3. So then you just have to work in numbers that are divisible by 3. So whatever paint count you have, that's the number that you need to make sure your big number can be divided by. Good question. Okay. All right. So now what I've done, this is the fun part. Now you don't have to do this like I did, because what I did here was I wrote this in Sharpie so that you could see it. I would do this in pencil if I were you. That way it's as light as possible. And when you paint over it, you won't be able to see it. So I might have to do, a couple of coats to get that covered up. But I really wanted you guys to see how to do this. So you're taking your pencil and you're counting the ridges. So if you look right here, it starts with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So each ridge gets a number all the way around until I get back to the number 1. So like I said, mine worked out well. I had 18 ridges. This one, I counted, this one has 2, and I counted it as 1, just so I'd get to 18. And then once you get your 18, then you're going to line up your colors, Roy G. Biff, and you're going to start with 1. Where'd my 1 go? There it is. You're going to start with 1, and that's going to be R. And number 2 will be O. 3 is Y. 4 is G. 5 is B. 6 is V. Or whatever, whatever colors you're doing. So if you're just doing, these 3 colors, then you would repeat those 3 letters. So then under my number, I wrote the letter of the color that I want in that section. That way, when I get started, I know I don't have to think about, I don't have to worry about, oh, did I do enough orange, or did I do enough green, or oh my gosh, I put green next to green twice, This will keep you on track. So all you have to do is start with 1, and it says R. So I know I'm going to start with my red, and I'm just going to take my palette. If I can get Frank's hair out of the palette. Man, Frank, you got your hair everywhere. You need a trip to the salon, sir. Okay. So let me move my paints out of the way so you guys can see here. And all right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my paint colors in this palette. And I have a whole bunch of brushes. I don't know if you can see, but I just got like a ton of foam brushes here, and I'm just going to use a different foam brush for each one. Now, this is going to be similar to Frank. Remember how we talked about your pumpkin is sitting on the ground, or not the ground, but it's sitting down. So if you're painting the bottom, oh my gosh, Frank, your hair, it's everywhere. This is awful. If you're painting the bottom and you sit it down on your grown-up's table, you might get yelled at. So we don't want to do that. So first of all, put down newspaper, craft paper, saran wrap, whatever you have. Put something down to cover up the table so you don't get paint on the table first and foremost. And then if you have something like this, like a mason jar ring, it has very little surface area to touch your pumpkin. So it works really well to set your pumpkin down on while it's drying so that you can do a whole ridge and then you can set it down and it can dry and it's not getting the paint on the table or messing it up. All right, so I'm going to start by prepping my paint palette. And I'm going to make sure that I keep my paints in order. So I'm going to do the red, the orange, the yellow, the green, the blue, and the violet. So that it's in the order that I need to go, and I just keep going in that same order and I don't get out. Now, if you get confused, you've always got it written down here, so it's kind of like a safety net. All right. And now I'm using Craft Smart. Actually, I'm using whatever I had. I feel like craft paint's hard to come by. So you can use Craft Smart, you can use Americana, you can use Creatology. Creatology is like one of my favorite. Just keep in mind that paints vary by, you know, the thickness of the, you know, how liquidy it is. It also varies in the pigment density, and what that means. That's just fancy speak for, you know, it has a really good coverage. So if it has a lot of the pigment in it, then it's going to take fewer coats. If it's thinner and it has less pigment, then you might have to put more coats on. So only you will be able to tell, because, you know, we're all using different kind of paints here, but I'm going to start with craft paint because that has pretty good coverage and I have it handy. And again, I'm just going to put, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, I have 10 spots, so I'm only going to need 6. Whatever order you want to put your, you know, if you're doing less colors than I am or more colors than I am, just put them in that order. All right. Any questions while I'm filling these up, Lindsay?
Someone asked, what about only doing 2 colors?
Oh yeah, just so then that's easy, right? You just alternate one and then the other. So let me show you an example of what I meant by how thick they are. Man, that one's gonna like pour out of, so see this orange, it's like super liquidy, and the red is like really thick. It kept its shape when I poured it out into the dish. You can see it better like that. So that's what I'm talking about, and that's just the difference between, you know, brands here. So there's 2 different brands, so it doesn't matter. One, it's not like one's gonna be better, or do you know, oh, I can't use that one. It's just gonna, you know, it's just one of those things that will determine maybe how many coats you have to put on or something like that. Okay. It looks like mustard. All right. Maybe you guys can tell Lindsay what you guys are planning to dress up as for Halloween. My kiddo cannot decide. We wait until the last minute to buy the costume because inevitably she can know for 9 months, and then the last minute could be something different. So it's so hard to pick. I wish you could be lots of different things at the same time. This is just a lot of fun. Do you have anybody dressing up for Halloween? Nobody's gonna tell? Nobody's decided?
Oh, we have one. No, 2. Hermione Granger.
Oh yeah, Hermione.
A witch.
Nice.
We have characters from The Greatest Showman.
Hey, that's a good movie. I like that a lot. Yeah, our daughter's first Halloween, we dressed her up as Hedwig. So I'm a big Harry Potter fan. I don't guess there's any like medium grade Harry Potter fans.
Yeah, you're either all in.
Yep. All right. All right. So we got our paint. That looks nice and pretty. Look at that. So pretty. And then I'm going to take a little piece of parchment paper here. Man, I should have made Frank go last. His hair is everywhere. Okay, and I'm just going to put this down on the parchment paper so that if I have a spill, then I'm not getting in trouble. All right, now, I would advise using a foam brush for this piece. And I want to talk a little bit about, like, you've got different brush sizes, right? So this one is like just under 1 inch wide, and this looks like 1.5 inches. So you're probably not going to want this. This is going to make your life complicated because you're going to have to do everything sideways. So I would advise that you do something that's either the 1 inch or the 3/4 inch. There's even a 1/2 inch, which is fine too. So just depending on how big your pumpkin is. There you go, you can kind of see. So 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, and then 1 inch. So anything in this size range will work fine. You can also use a regular brush. So if you have a bristle brush, that's okay too. You can use that. And then I have a black that I'm going to use for the stem when I get done. So I'm going to set it to the side. I'm not going to get it out yet because I'll have to wait for all of this to dry before I can put that on. All right, so I'm going to start with 1, which is R. So that's red. And I labeled mine so you can see. If that helps you, I would do the same thing. All right, and I'm going to start with my 3/4 inch brush. Some of these are wider, so on the wide ones, you know, I'll use the wide brush. On the narrow ones, like there's a couple that get pretty skinny, I'll use the little skinny brush. All right.
We have a few more. Raggedy Ann or
Nice.
Belle.
Ooh.
Not decided yet.
Okay, all right. I respect that.
Superhero, a
Nice.
pumpkin, and JoJo.
JoJo. Oh, I like those. I think my daughter would probably end up being something like Barb from Trolls, or she's really into Trolls right now. All right, so you can see right here, I'm just going right on the edge where the crease is.
We have a question. Is 1 2-ounce bottle of paint enough to cover the 9-inch pumpkin with 2 coats?
Yes.
Yes.
So I did Frank, and I didn't even use half of this, and I did 2 coats on him. So you should have, there should be plenty. It goes a long way. It's a good question. So, and again, you can go all the way down to the bottom if you want, because we can put this, we can set this on the little metal ring so it doesn't get on the table. And this one's going to need 2 coats. Again, I would still do white as your base if you can, but it's still going to need 2 coats even with the white. And another little trick you can use if you have like not a super steady hand, or you really like clean, crisp lines, you can use masking tape like we were using it earlier, but you can use it to tape off the pumpkin. So let me set that up there. So you can run that masking tape along the ridge line so that you can paint in between, and then when it dries you can peel it off. So what you'll have to do if you're using masking tape is you'll have to skip like 1 or 2. So you'll tape one off, and then you'll paint that one, and maybe skip 1 or 2, tape the next one off, paint that one. And that's a really big benefit of having the Roy G. Biv written on the top of your pumpkin in pencil, is it allows you to work out of order without worrying that you're going to miss a color, or you're going to get your colors out of order, or anything like that. All right, so check this out. So I want to show you what I meant. Like you can see the number 1 and a little bit through the paint still. So coat 1 will mostly cover Sharpie. So that's why I'm recommending you use the pencil, because if you use a pencil, you're going to cover it straight away. If you want to use Sharpie, or if you don't have anything else and you use Sharpie, it is okay. By the second coat, you won't be able to see anything. So, all right, any questions? I'm just going to let that dry just for a second before I move on.
No, just a few more. We have X-Lord from Fortnite, Harley Quinn,
Ooh.
and a 5-year-old that has requested for a homemade cardboard robot.
What?
So that would be cool.
That's a good one. That's a big ask. Homemade cardboard robot. Oh, I've made my fair share of cardboard structures in my time. I made a cardboard car. That was fun, but never a robot. Good luck to you. Okay, so I just set my brush aside here on my palette paper because I'm going to come back to it. So that's why I have a lot of brushes. I'm going to use a brush for each color. That way I'm not constantly washing off, you know, the brush in between. All right, so my next section is orange. It's O. And I'm going to skip it. And the reason why is, just like we talked about, if you want to paint the top half and wait for it to dry, or you know, you can paint it in sections and let it dry. I'm going to skip it because I want to let it dry a little bit more. Because what happens is if you paint while the other paint is wet, you run the risk of them starting to blend together and muddy. So I'm gonna just skip over O and go to Y. And Y is kind of skinny, so I'm going to use my 1/2 inch brush here. And that's seriously, like, this could be French's mustard right now. That is powerfully bright yellow. Okay, so I'm just going to sit this on my, you can kind of see under there, I'm sitting it on the ring. Or, you know, if you make sure that your paint's not there, you can sit it straight on the table. And I'm just going to do the same thing I did with the red. I'm going to start up here by the stem. And this one, since we're going to paint the stem black, you don't have to worry so much about, like, if you get a little bit of paint on this one like we did with Frank. So if you're ever going to paint the stem, don't worry about getting paint on it. If you want to leave it the color that it came, then I would suggest you take the masking tape and tape it off. And I'm just going to go down, all the way down. You're just going to stay on the ridge lines. And again, if you guys missed me saying it before, if you want really crisp lines, you can always use masking tape to go down those ridges. And that'll give you super crisp lines. I don't mind. I won't say that I have like a super steady hand, but I can do a pretty good job free-handed here. I'm not going to mask for this one. All right. And you can see I'm not going all the way to the middle of the bottom. The nice thing is pumpkins sit down like this, so you don't have to, you know, worry about going all the way down. Now the yellow has a harder time covering up that Sharpie like we talked about, so you can make it thicker over your letters if you want, or you'll just have to do more coats. Okay, so see, I skipped the O in Roy. And that does not want to sit. There we go. And that way the red and the yellow can dry, and it'll give me time to, you know, do some more, and then I can come back and do this one without worrying about muddying the ones next to it. So I'm going to skip green, and I'm going to go to blue. And blue is also skinny. And blue's one that was really big that I had to split. So see up here, there's like there's a ridge that starts, and then the ridge stops. And it becomes one big piece. But for the count, I needed it to be 2. So on one like this, you can try free-handing this one as well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pencil and I'm just going to trace that crease that starts up here. And I'm just going to lightly go down and split the pumpkin in half, the ridge in half with my line so that I know where to paint. So now you can see I did it with a pencil since the ridge line wasn't there. And that way I don't get too far off of my track. And that one's another slim one here. So I'm going to use the 1/2 inch for the blue. So I'm skipping the green and I'm going to go straight to the blue. And again, I'm going to stay between the ridge and that pencil mark I just made.
What is the difference in using a foam brush versus a regular painting brush?
With this type of paint and this type of surface, I find that the foam brush gives you fewer of those deep brush lines. So if you're painting with really thin paint, you probably aren't very likely to get a brush line anyway. But the bristle brushes have, they have bristles, right? So it's all independent. So those bristles create tiny little individual lines. So it just gives you a different effect. Like, there's no, you have to use a foam brush or you have to use a bristle brush. It's easier for a lot of reasons, and it gives you like a nice smooth effect that you might not get from a bristle brush. But you by no means have to use a foam brush. Good questions. All right, so I'm just going to go down by that little line I made, down the ridge. And the other thing is, like, if you do get somebody walks by and bumps you and you're like, and you like mark over into a section that isn't that color, don't worry about it. Like, this is craft paint, and as soon as it dries, like, you can paint over it. Don't worry about it. Or if it's still wet, a lot of this stuff you can wipe off with a little bit of like a wet paper towel or something. The blue is pretty light, just like the yellow. You can see through it a little bit. I think after our second coat, it'll be fine. Okay. All right. The next color would be violet, also known as purple. So we're going to skip that one and go back to red. So if you've noticed the pattern here, like I'm skipping orange, green, and purple and doing red, yellow, blue. So that's fine because those are the brushes that I have out and I can keep them wet that way. And then when we get back around here, that red should be dry enough and that yellow should be dry enough that I can start putting in the alternating colors. Something else that I want to call out to you, since we're sitting here staring at it, how many of you guys know what kind of colors or what these 3 colors are called? Do anybody know what red, yellow, and blue are? Do we have any answers? Red, yellow, and blue are the primary colors. So all the colors are made up of the primary colors. So your secondary colors are made up from your primary colors. So the color that's going to go between red and yellow is orange. So when you mix red and yellow, you get orange. And green is what you get when you mix yellow and blue. And purple is what you get when you mix blue and red. So very cool little lesson we've learned here with Roy G. Biv is you have all of these colors, and within this set, you have the primary colors and the secondary colors. Did anybody get it?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right,
That's the
good.
primary. And Alana says it looks like a beach ball.
Oh, yeah. These are yes, these are classic beach ball colors. Good eye, Lana. Okay. All right. I'm going to keep going here with my red. Okay. All right. And again, just going to paint all the way from the top, not worry too much about if I get the stem the wrong color, because I'm going to paint over that. Just go down the ridge all the way down. You can turn it over like this. Having the stem on here is nice because you can hold it, you know, by the stem. Makes it easy to wield. My goodness, I think Frank's hair is on the bottom of this pumpkin. Seriously. Come on, Frank. All right. And there we go. All right. And then the yellow. I'm just going to keep turning it around here while I hold it. This is a lot easier to hold it like this. And what's good is not having to worry about the painting the very, very bottom where they all come together. Okay. Just painting up, staying on the ridge. Don't worry if you go over.
Any ideas for making the pumpkin stem bigger? How to add to it?
You could use Model Magic and build up that stem a little bit. That would probably be the easiest thing to do, and it would have a similar texture as the pumpkin itself, the foam pumpkin, because Model Magic has that foamy kind of feeling when it dries. And then you can paint it. So doing the Model Magic, oh my gosh, seriously, got hair in my paint. If you have trouble getting the Model Magic to attach to the top of the pumpkin stem, don't worry, you can use a little bit of glue. So you can use, you can build off the top of the pumpkin stem like while it's wet, and then let it dry. And if you find that it like wants to come away, just put some glue it down, and then if it leaves a seam on the sides, you can take more and fill it in. I would actually recommend putting the Model Magic like around the top of the stem just a little bit, and then bringing it on out. And if you want to do a curl, you can even like work the curl into it, maybe roll it into a log and then bring it off. And then take the back of a small, this is not small enough, but take the back of a small paintbrush, and then there's creases on the stem. So you just run your back of your paintbrush up that crease, and then once you hit that smooth Model Magic, just keep pulling that line up the stem. And what you'll do is you'll create all of those same creases that are in the bottom. You'll be able to bring those up into the new Model Magic that you've added so that it will look seamless at that point. So again, that's just off the top of my head, my advice. I'm sure there could be other ways you could do that, but that's the one that I think I would try if I were doing it. All right, I'm doing blue now. This is another one that I split the wide, had a wide section and I split it into two. So the crease comes down part of it, but then it goes away. So you can use your pencil like we did earlier and draw a line, or in this case, it was kind of short for mine. So I just eyeballed it. It'll be fine. Okay, so I got my blue. So look, it's starting to look kind of cool from the bottom, huh? All right, so that's 2 of each. And remember, we had 18 sections and 18 is divisible by 6 3 times. So I'll have 3 of each color. All right, so back to red. This will be the last time I put the red on.
I love glitter. What will I need if I wanted to add glitter?
Oh, you need glitter if you're going to add glitter. You'll need glitter, and depending on how you're going to do your glitter, you may only need the glitter and your paint. So if I were doing this, I would say when you get to your last coat, so whatever, you know, when you're happy with the coverage of the paint, while it's still wet, sprinkle your glitter into the wet paint. That way it's laying on top. You have to be careful. If you mix glitter into paint, sometimes the paint can cover up the glitter in such a way that it makes it less shiny, and you kind of lose that sparkly effect. So I always like to, if I'm adding glitter to paint like this, I always like to add it while it's kind of wet. And another way you can do it, so let's say you're doing this in sections and it's not really, like it's drying, or you know, it's not really wet when you need it to be, then I would say go ahead and let it dry, like paint everything the way you want. And then you can take like a Mod Podge or a clear, they actually make a clear paint. I don't remember what it's called, but it's basically, it's translucent. So it could even be like a super translucent white that doesn't really look white when it dries. But you can coat it in that, the Mod Podge or whatever, and then sprinkle your glitter on that while it's wet. All right, so I've got red. Next I need to do yellow. Or they, you know what, Craftsmart makes, I think it's Craftsmart, makes a glitter, it's a glitter paint, but it's not paint like you would think. Like it's in a clear liquid that dries. When it dries, it keeps the glitter on. So you could paint that on after you painted the colors that you want on the base of the pumpkin. These are all good questions. You can also put stickers on pumpkins. You know, my kiddos love stickers. Okay, my gosh, I'm getting a hand cramp from holding it like this. I'm gonna have to sit it down for a minute. I didn't do my Incredible Hulk exercises this morning, apparently. It does not want to stay. All right, there we go. Okay, all right, last time to paint blue, and then we're gonna get to move to the secondary colors. All right, and I'm not going to get all of the secondary colors done, but I'm going to get started so I can show you what it's going to start to look like. And then we'll move on to our finale with our decor pumpkin. All right, and hopefully those of you who are painting Frank have gotten Frank done, unless you stopped on Frank and started doing, you know, your striped or your rainbow pumpkin. Okay, all right, so that was the last of the blue. So now I'm back around. So if you look at the bottom, you can see I've done every other section. So we have a set of primaries going all the way around. And now I'm gonna get 3 new brushes, and I'm gonna do the secondary colors here. Okay, I'm just gonna go with the 3/4, I think, for all of these. And we're gonna start with orange. That was the one that was like super liquidy. So funny how paints do that. All right, so I'm gonna go back to my number 2 spot, because that's gonna be where the paint is the driest, because that's where I started, was with 1 and 3. And then I'm gonna come in with that orange. And I'm just gonna go right up to where the color is and just make sure I'm covering up the white. So it doesn't matter if I get it a little over onto the red. We talked about how red and yellow make orange anyway. So orange has red in it. It's not going to matter if you get a little bit over there. It's not going to be like if you know, put green on red, then it starts to turn brown. And I'm just going to go all the way down. And again, if you're super precise about these lines and you want to make them really crisp, then I would recommend that once you do the every other color, pull your masking tape off that you made the lines with, let it dry completely, and then lightly put the more masking tape back on over the colors you painted so you get that crisp line again. And then you can go in with your secondary color. But be careful that it's completely dried, because if you put that masking tape on while it's still wet, it's going to peel that paint back up. And use a low tack masking tape, or it may still want to pull that tape up anyway. Oh, see, hold on to my thing there. All right. And we're just going to come up like this. All right. So you're just getting that orange right up to the edge. It's okay if there's a little overlap. You can always come back and fix those, because we're going to have to put more than one coat on here anyway. All right, so you can kind of see, look at that. So we're starting to come together here. You got red, orange, yellow, and I'm going to do the green. I'm going to do one green and one purple just so you can see a full section before we move on. Did anybody get their Frank done? Have we heard?
I haven't heard.
Heard from the audience?
No.
All right, maybe they're still working hard on it. All right, this green was really thin too. Man, that's so funny. Like the secondary colors are really thin. I wonder if there's a thing about that. All right. So again, with the colors that tend to be more thin, you might need more than the 2 coats that we talked about earlier. Or if you're using, you know, Creatology paint sometimes, well, actually, it just depends on the Creatology paint. Some of that stuff is really nice and has some good coverage in it. And if you go really slow and put on a thick coat, I'm going really fast here, so these coats are thin, then you'll also have to put fewer coats on. Okay, so I got my green. And then we're going to do our purple. Okay.
Oh, Peyton says, I'm done with my Frank.
Ooh, go Peyton. I like it.
A lot of comments, pretty colors. Looks good.
Thank you. Told you, man, the rainbow, I love rainbows. I love bright colors. I love a good rainbow pumpkin. I'm not gonna get too terribly close over here because this red isn't quite dry yet. So it's gonna start pulling in red. I don't wanna mess it up. All right, so look here. You can see a full section here. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. So this is what it's gonna look like, and you're gonna go all the way around. You're gonna just keep going in between those primary colors with your secondary colors. And then I would say once you get around one time and you've got one coat on, you're probably gonna wanna break by then. Like my hand's already tired and I'm not through once. You're gonna want to let it dry, and then you can come back in with that second coat. All right? All right, any questions about the rainbow before we move on
Nope.
to our last pumpkin?
They are excited for the next texture pumpkin,
Alrighty.
though.
I'm excited too. Let me just clear myself some space. Come on. Yeah. All right. And okay. Get myself some nice space here so I can show you guys this last set of pumpkins. Okay. Oh, and then again, with the rainbow pumpkin, don't forget you're going to paint if you want to, paint the top black. like that. Gives it a nice clean look. All right, now let me get everything for our fall pumpkin here. Okay, so this one is a chalky paint distressed looking pumpkin, and I've got two actually. I want to show you. While I'm getting this out, I'm going to remind you guys again, I know I said it earlier, but don't forget, as you finish these pumpkins, you want to take pictures of them, show them off, let everybody see them. You can put them on social media and tag them, hashtag make it with Michaels, and then everybody can see the awesome work you've been doing. All right, so we have two pumpkins here. I've got a small one with a leaf pattern on it, and then a larger one that just has a textured pattern. So I'm going to show you how to do like just a regular texture to it, and then we're going to talk about how to do this one as well. And you can, and this is just shows examples of like if you want to put raffia on it, put a bow on it. You know, you can leave it without if you want. You can make a whole set of these too. Like you can do all different kinds of designs with these. You could write your family names on them. And you don't have to do, this is just one style. So this type of distressing with the cream, you know, you can also use like, I really like this French teal. This one's really cool. So if you're doing something that's a darker base, maybe you do the blue, like a teal, and then you're gonna do a clear wax. So it kind of has a different effect than, you know, the light with the dark over the top. So, all right. I'm gonna set these aside. Move Frank. Okay. All right, so this first one here, I'm gonna start with the big pumpkin. And I've done a little pre-work here because I want to show you like the stages, and then we'll go, well, I'm gonna do some of this with you, but I want you to kind of see, I took a white pumpkin. Again, you can do this with the orange pumpkin. It may just take more coats of the cream paint, but you're just gonna take hot glue and drizzle it down the ridges. Now, you can do heavy or light. So this one, I wanted to show you what it looks like if you just do light. So so the deep lines, I didn't do any glue in the deep lines. I only did it on top of the ridge. This one, there's glue in the deep lines as well as on top of the ridge. So again, it's up to you. And honestly, I would play around with it. Like this is a super fun technique. And there's so much you can do. You could just do all different kinds of things. This one is the one with the leaf pattern. So we'll talk about this a little bit more in a second, where you draw on your leaf and then you're gonna trace it with the hot glue. All right, so this is what it's gonna look like in just a second. So we're gonna do this part for you just now, and then you can see how that treatment is. All right, so I'm gonna take my glue gun, and again, this is just, you know, I'm just using a Craft Smart glue gun. You can use the floral glue guns, you know, whichever ones you have, and you're just gonna go down the middle, and you're not gonna go in like a straight line. Think of it as like kind of squiggly, kind of messy. You know, you don't want it to be perfect. It's supposed to look more like a bark or a natural surface. And you're just gonna do this all the way around. And if you wanna do a pattern, you can do a pattern too. So let's say you wanna get fancy and do like zigzags. If you're not going for that natural look, you can do more pattern work. But for this particular one, we want it to look, you know, a little bit more abstract. All right, just letting my glue gun heat up a little bit more before I keep going. So see, just laying that glue down in squiggly lines that are not uniform. All right. And you're just gonna do that all the way around the pumpkin. going to take a little bit of time. So I just wanted to show you, and you're going to need to let it dry. So it's going to take, you know, 10, 15 minutes to let this get nice and dry. You want it to cool off and stuff before you paint it. Now I want to talk to you a little bit about the painting part that happens after this. So once you've, you know, laid all of your glue out on the pumpkin and it's dried, you're gonna paint it. And you can do a couple of things. So I think the instructions call for, you know, a Krylon chalky paint. There are, as we just saw, Craftsmart has a premium chalky paint that that I used here. So this, it's kind of hard to see. You know, if I'd done an orange pumpkin, you could have seen, you can see the shine more. So you can see how it gets chalky and it has that matte finish here. So this is the unpainted, like clear glue on just the regular white pumpkin. And then here's where I started painting it. You can see how you can't see the sheen after you get past this ridge. So over here is what it's going to look like when you first put that chalk paint on. And it could be, you know, you could use the spray paint. I don't like to use spray paint a whole bunch. So like I just use the craft paint, but it just depends on what you have and what your preference is. All right. All right, so now we're going to put the wax coating on. So this one, you can either put it in a dish. I'm going to put it in a little dish so that I can spread it out with my brush. You can put it directly onto the pumpkin if you want. I find that you just have a, like, since you're not doing a super thick coat like with my Frankenstein, you know, you can just pour the paint on there and you're going to cover it a couple of times anyway. With this one, if you want the ability to control the coverage a little bit more, I would recommend putting it in, you know, putting it on a paint palette or putting it in some sort of dish so that you can, you know, you can kind of, you can see how thin it is. Like it's going to be a little bit transparent. It's not super opaque like a paint. And then you're going to rub it down the sides here. You can go as thin or as thick as you want. I try to get it kind of thin on the smooth parts, and then the paint's going to get caught up in these. The idea is that the dark parts get caught in these lines that you've created with the glue. And you can do this with a foam brush, but this is where I find that the bristle brush works in my favor. You know, we talked about different brushes for different applications. I like this because you have all those little bristles and they can get in there a little bit better. So you can use stippling, you know, you can do like this to really get it in the creases. And then you can smooth it out like this so that you get that nice finished look on the smoother parts, but you make sure that you get it all in there. And you can see how it's starting to get caught in that glue area. And it's going to get caught in the pitting of the pumpkin itself. Any questions so far? Okay.
What if they don't have the wax? Is there an alternative?
Yeah, absolutely. You can actually take a brown, and I would probably say if you're wanting this particular effect, the closest brown would be a burnt sienna or a burnt umber are going to get you. So if you want a more reddish brown, you're going to want to go with a burnt sienna. And if you want a little bit more of that gray green brown, like a mossy brown, you could go with the burnt umber. And I would just thin it out. So again, finding, you know, you can, if you use an acrylic paint, you can do that with water. You can thin it out with water, or you can use an actual medium mixer. So there's tons of things out there that will mix in with the paint to thin it. And the technique is going to be similar. It's really just you're brushing it in such a way so that the concentration of the pigment is getting caught in those low points and around the high points and in all of this texturing. So what it does is it really makes that texture on the pumpkin pop. Any other questions?
Nope.
That was a good one. I know it's really hard. Everybody's crafting, man. Everybody, it's so enjoyable. You know, the holidays are coming up. Everybody loves to DIY something, you know, and people are trying new stuff. So I feel like every time I go to get something, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, what if they don't have what I need? But again, the thing with art and crafting is, you know, it's that creative piece, and you can always take something different and you can still get the same effect.
What color wax are you using?
This one is the Craft Smart Premium Antique Wax. Here. There's another one. I think Americana. I think it's Americana, but it could be plaid. I think probably every brand has a version of this antique wax. They may just call it something different. So it may be like a cream wax or a brown wax, or, you know, something like that. But this is the one that I'm using here. And then the white one that I used is the parchment. And this one is a little lighter than the Krylon that's on this one. But it doesn't really matter because a lot of what you're doing is getting covered up. But again, like, don't sweat if you go to the store and you're like, oh my gosh, they're out of Craft Smart. What am I gonna do? Like, if you can look and find some other ones or ask for some help. You know, they can show you like all of the different options. If they don't have the exact one, you know, you can always take like just a regular acrylic paint if you wanted to, and thin it out and just, you know, get the concentration in those low and high points, the texture, which is what I'm doing right here.
How long should you let the chalky paint dry before you apply the wax paint?
I think I only did one coat because I used a white pumpkin. And so this one was actually super easy because I didn't have to go heavy on the coverage. It was probably 10 minutes that it dried. Now, if you're using the Krylon, if you're spraying it on, it's probably going to take a little bit longer to dry. So I would just say, like, if you touch it and it makes a fingerprint, and I would touch it down here where, you know, you're not going to see it if you mess it up. If you touch it and it's still tacky, don't try to do the wax part over it. You really do want it to be good and dry. It's not like the other pumpkins that we were doing where you can kind of paint when it's tacky or do your other coats when it's still tacky. You really want it to be dry because you're brushing kind of hard with this wax because you're trying to get it down into the creases. And if it's still wet, which of course the first place or the last place is going to dry, is right in here in this textured area. Like, that's where it pools naturally. So that's where it's going to be wet. So if you don't let it dry, then what's going to happen is you're going to pull that white chalky paint up and get it mixed in with the wax, and you're going to lose that effect. So good question. You can see I just go like this over that textured area to really get it in there. You can like scrape the sides of the bristles on it to get it in there, and then just smooth it back out like that. So the effect is coming along very nicely. And you can see from one that's been done, like, how similar. And you can use, you can do more than one coat on here if you want. But I find that if you do too many, like, you start to lose that definition. So really getting it dark here and then leaving it as light as possible on this flat area gives it the very best effect. All right, I'm going to do a little bit more, and then I'm going to show you how to do these leaves. All right. That's good. All right, so that's a whole little section. And you can, this actually dries pretty fast. Like I found that this pumpkin goes a lot faster than some of these others where you have to do multiple coats or really thick coats. Like on the white, like only having to put one coat, it dries really fast and then the wax goes on and dry. Like over here where I started, it's already dry for the most part. The only part that's wet is where it pooled in here in these low points. All right, so I'm gonna set this aside. And we're going to talk about this textured pumpkin real fast. So, or the leaf, they're all textured, aren't they? The leaf pumpkin. So I'm using just the smaller pumpkin for these, but it's really just, you want to actually be able to see this one better. You're really just putting whatever pattern on here you want. So the leaves, like, it's just all different kinds and shapes of leaf. You can do them all the same. You could do a design. You could, you know, you could actually draw out the face of like a jack-o'-lantern and trace that and get the same effect with, but just a different design. So really, like it's endless what you can do with this, because this is really just about the technique. And then you know, you guys are taking it to the next level and making it unique to you. So, but if you want to do the leaf, I just freehanded some of these leaves on here, and you can, you know, find leaves online. You could print them out. You can trace them. Like I just look at a leaf and just draw, you know, sketch it out, because it's not going to be super perfect. Remember, you are drawing with hot glue here, so it's going to leave little strings occasionally, but it gives it that really cool antique-y look, and it gives it a very natural feel. So, all right, so I'm going to show you guys here. So let's do this leaf right here. So I've already drawn this one on, and this one is a little bit more difficult than the squiggly lines, because that one, it's like, you don't have to be super precise. But with this one, you want to try and keep your line true to your sketch. So you're going to go a little bit slower. And it is hot glue, so like if you do something and that you're really, really unhappy with, like you can wait until it dries and you can just like pick it off. So don't fret. Crafting and art should not stress you out. This is what we do for fun. All right, so I made my leaf. It's really hard to see, I know, because it's like clear on white. So I made my leaf outline. I'm gonna do the stem. The most frustrating part of hot glue is like the wispies that you get. It's like cotton candy. So when they dry, you can just pick them off like that. They come off pretty easily. All right, so I did the outline of my leaf, and then I'm gonna do the middle. So I just drew the ridge up the middle of the leaf, and then the little veins on the side. And you really just, you're following your stencil, your outline here. So it's not complicated. You just have to have patience for this part. It's definitely slower than the freeform that we just did a second ago with the squiggles. And there we go. All right, so then you're just gonna let that dry. So you see, I just outlined my leaf. And you can go over it if you don't like the way it turned out, or if you if your line gets really far off from what you want, you're just really displeased with it, like just wait till it dries, pick it off. I'm gonna make that one a little thicker. It kind of got thin there, and start over. So, all right. And then the same thing is true for this pumpkin as the big pumpkin that we did. So technique is the same. You're gonna take your chalk paint, you know, whichever one you choose, and then you're gonna take, you know, paint it, let it dry, and you're gonna take your wax and you're gonna do your bristle wash all over it just to get that effect. This one has a little bit more of a swirly effect. So instead of really following down with the lines, like going down with your brush this way, it's more of like, you know, you're really just getting in there and you're swirling it all around and and it's a little bit more chaotic, which is kind of cool, and it fits well with the leaves because, you know, it kind of looks like the leaves are swirling around anyway. So again, play with it, have fun. You know, you're really not going to mess it up. And get creative. Like if you want to do something a completely different color, you can still get a similar effect by using different colors. You know, like we talked about earlier, you know, you could use the teal and the white. And let's see, actually, let me just do, actually, let's shake it up. I'll do one of these on this little one that I just did, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. And I'll let it dry while I'm showing you how to do the raffia. Right, so let me pour a little bit out. And this is the leaf I did earlier, so don't panic. I'm not putting this on a wet leaf over here. All right, so I'm just using the foam brush for this one because it's really just about coverage here. So just make sure you get your base paint on. And again, it looks really nice with this white pumpkin base, but don't panic if you only have access to the orange pumpkins. It's totally fine. It just, all it's going to mean to you is like having to put maybe an extra coat of something on, which is not a big deal. Do we have any questions while I'm finishing this up, Lindsay?
Well, this is perfect timing because we had someone say they bought pink chalky paint. So they were wondering, you know, what wax color would go over the pink.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can actually use the brown over the pink too, and it gives it that same antique distress look. And I'm going to show you what it looks to use a lighter color over it. The effect is a little different, you know, like we talked about. And if you can't find those waxes, like, don't panic. You really can take other paints and dilute them and get a similar effect. It may just take like a slight alteration to the technique to come out with that effect. But all right, so I'm gonna let this dry while I talk to you about the raffia. So if you want to put this on, really what this is it's just sections of raffia pulled together, and then, you know, tie a little knot in the end here, and then you're hot gluing each little knot all the way around. So you can see, if you just look at the top, there's just like probably 24 little tiny raffia knots all the way around. And it gives, you know, so when you're done, it's actually going to look like this. It's going to have like this crazy like hair all the way around it. It's going to look like a scarecrow probably. And then you're just going to take your scissors and trim the raffia where you want. So if you want that crazy effect, you can totally leave it. If you want to give it like a nice clean collar, which is kind of like what we've done here, you're just going, after the glue dries, you're just going to, you know, snip it where you want, you know, to make it as long as you want on the pumpkin. And like, it's probably, for a big pumpkin like this, you're probably going to want to do, you know, 15 to 24 little knotted bunches. And, you know, it's pretty easy. It's a little messy, but it's pretty easy. And then for the bow, and this is what the raffia looks like. I mean, it's just, it's all loose like this, but don't worry about it. You're not going for like, it doesn't have to be perfectly aligned. You're just getting a bunch of it like this. And then you're making that knot in the end. Like that. And that's your one bunch. So you're just making a bunch of little, you know, little, I don't know, raffia. What would you call this?
Bundle?
Bundle. Ooh, I like that. Okay, a bundle. Good. All right. Alrighty. So let's do the bow. All right, hot glue gun. There we go. Let's do the bow here. So I just take the ribbon with the wire. This is the 2-inch fall ribbon. And you can do whatever ribbon makes you happy. So this is just a pumpkin ribbon. You can use one that has a little color in it. So you can use one that's like super the same is as far as tone, like tonally the same. You can do like color pop. So because this is all kind of the same, put some pops of color in there. You don't have to put a bow on it at all. You don't have to do the bow or the raffia. This is just if you want to. So for the bow, just take a bunch off and you can make a loop like this. And just depending on how big you want the bow, it's a little easier to do this. Will depend on how big you want your loop. So like this one, it's like the size of this pumpkin's head here. You can do it, you know, that's what, 8 inches across. You do a smaller bow, larger bow. This is just a simple one that we're gonna do here. And I would say loop it around until you have like 6 or 8 sections. And cut. Chanel stem. So I have white because it matches my pumpkin. If you're using a more natural color, there are the natural Chanel stem colors that you can use. You know, you can make it match or not. And then really just, you know, you've looped it, right? Like this. And you're going to grab it in the middle like this. So it has this effect. And that's where you're going to put your pipe cleaner. Just twist it like this so it sticks down, because this is something that you can use to hot glue down to the top of the pumpkin. And then you're going to take your little pieces. So now see, we have all these layers. You're going to be able to pull them out like this. From each other like that. You get your dimensional bow. And you can pull them out a lot. You can leave it real tight and clean if you want. There are other bow types you can make, but this is a simple one that goes well on top of the pumpkin. So you can see that's the one used here. But there's lots of different ways you can do that. All right. So before we're too far out of time, oh man, that's still pretty wet. Let's see if I can get that to dry. Wish I had a hair dryer. I think some of it's dry. I can probably show you a little bit of the effect. All right. So I'm going to use this. So just going to pour out a little bit of that. This is the clear wax. Yeah, that'll work. I think the hooks are here. All right, we have a dryer. I'm gonna dry this real fast because I really want you to see what this looks like. There we go. You can do this at home with a hair dryer. Or if you have one of these little air dryers, it's awesome. Works well for embossing or drying paint on a pumpkin. All right, that is pretty good. All right, so now what I'm going to do is just take a little bit of this, do the same thing we did with the other, and just brush it in like this. Let it gather in those low spots. And I'm not doing this with a bristle brush, which is what you would do, but all right. So you can see it changes the effect there. It gives it that, you know, muted look. It enhances that chalky paint, but it has a completely different effect as, you know, the dark on light. See, but you still get that distressed antique look. And you can actually go over a color like the blue or the pink, like we talked about with that antique, like the brown. So just because you have a darker color on the bottom doesn't mean you can't use the darker wax. It's just, you know, like I said, play around with it. You know, you can get lots of different effects out of these. So it's fun to just try different things out. So any last questions?
Yes, can you show the bottles of the chalk paint and wax one more time?
Yeah. All right, so let's see. Here's the wax. Okay, so the ones I used for this pumpkin are the Craft Smart Parchment, and the wax that goes on top was the Craft Smart Premium Antique Wax. Okay, and then we just did this little experiment here with the teal, and that's the Craft Smart French teal, this one, and then the Craft Smart Premium Clear Wax. But again, you can use teal and the dark wax. That's okay too. All right. Okay, guys, remember, I want to see your pumpkins. So take some pictures. Let's put them on social media. You can hashtag if you want us to see your work. Can you show the? Okay. All right. So hashtag make it with Michaels and show us your pumpkins. I am super happy that you guys joined us today. This has been a lot of fun. So again, you know, I think we're doing another one of these October 31st. It'll be Monster Bash, and we would love if you would join us for that one too. So happy Saturday, and thanks again for spending time with us. We'll see you guys next time.